feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast, and we're brought to you by Prize Picks. Coming at you Tuesday morning, it's November 5th after the Wolves' first real blowout win of the season. The Wolves took down Taj Gibson and the Charlotte Hornets at Target Center, 114-93 last night. And you know what? That just score looks like and sounds like a score from last season. It was kind of like the first game, I think, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. You're like, okay, this team does kind of look like last season's team had that feel, but it was Charlotte, so baby steps. We're going to mix in plenty of specifics, I think, from last night's game. But the plan today, I guess because it's been 2 weeks exactly since the season started, is to just do an episode on sort of our takeaways from those first 2 weeks. And I have Kyle Theige here with me. What's up, Kyle?
What's up, man?
I'm not a lot. It's November 5th. I'm doing this pod, and then I'm actually getting on the road and going to Chicago. I'm getting there a couple days early before the Wolves play there on Thursday, and my brother lives down there. I know you know all this, but I feel like
a little behind the scenes.
Yeah. So I'm heading down to Chicago right after this, and that's what's up with me.
Yeah, we're recording this early on my end of the country, but as always, because today's a big day, this will come out in a couple hours. But if you're listening to this, go out and vote. Big day, go vote. It's your voice. It's important. However you vote, whichever way you may go. But big day today to vote. But an even bigger day. It's also National Donut Day, so I think Krispy Kreme's giving out free ones. But it's like 2 weeks since we were in LA for that opener, and I don't know about you, but it has felt like 2 years.
Yep.
Not 2 weeks. I'm really not
online. But in a good way.
No, but I'm really not online anymore. But every time I check it, it's
that's such a lie.
No, it's not a lie. You want to do the screen time thing? The website that I used to, or the app that I used to frequent a lot is a tough hang now for multiple reasons. But it also has kind of been, and we'll get into this later, but I think it's been a little bit of a tough hang if you follow or cheer or cover the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I think that's kind of what motivated me to do sample size, 3 inches of soil test. Where are we at 2 weeks in? Mm-hmm. Because I actually think while the team is off to kind of a sludgy start at 4-3 after winning last night, there's some really interesting things to talk about. And none of them really were specific to last night's game, even though some of my takeaways are related to that. So do you just want to let it rip and go?
Well, how did you approach your takeaways, and then give me your first takeaway?
I just approached it like, okay, every 2 weeks of the season, 2 weeks we're in LA, or 2 weeks ago we're in LA, I'm constantly throwing notes in my notes app or in our text thread. I'm just texting you random things. So I kind of went and reviewed those last night of all right, what are my biggest takeaways? And just to get it started, I've used this before, but it was really evident last night watching the Timberwolves play the Charlotte Hornets. Where you're drafted matters so much. I think Anthony Edwards gets a ton of credit for changing the culture in Minnesota because of his play on the court, but also because his personality and just the kind of leader he is off the court, and nothing should be taken away from that. But I also think the organization gets a little credit for drafting him and putting him in a position. I watched him last night in these last 2 weeks, like the quotes he's had post game or what he's done on the court. He's playing winning basketball, and I like watching LaMelo Ball play. But Grady, who is the best in the business, did a really professional job last night of calling a LaMelo Ball game without being like, that was fucking stupid. But LaMelo is in year 5? Ant's in year 5. LaMelo's averaging twice as many turnovers as he was as a rookie. Again, we're 7-8 games in the season. He's averaging 6 turnovers a game. He just, that Hornets team has nothing that looks like, hey, I can put a pin in that in their building. I really like their coach, who was really vocal last night on the call. Like, you could hear him drop 9 F-bombs last night.
Oh, really?
on FanDuel Sports Network. But I think it's really important that Anthony Edwards was drafted to an organization that has taken his career seriously so far, because and this is maybe a diss, I guess, but I just don't know if Ant is Ant if he's drafted by a team that just lets him go out there and do whatever he wants every single night. And that's what I think they do with LaMelo. And he's a really good player. And they bid on every pump fake he had last night. I don't know if LaMelo Ball is ever going to make the second round of the playoffs with the roster that they put around him right now and the way that they allow him to play basketball.
Yeah, just a couple things reacting off of that. I think LaMelo's third coach in Borrego year one, maybe two. I don't know how many years of that. Borrego, Clifford, and now Charles Lee, and I guess Ant has technically had two coaches. He had Ryan for the first half of his first season. But yeah, like you're kind of getting at like, and it's just kind of something we've learned in the whole Ant era, the value of continuity, the value of like kind of the same faces being in the organization, right? Or relatively minimal change. And for so long, the Wolves were the Hornets, right? It's like, new coach, here you go, Wiggins, right? Here's your fourth coach and third different Pobo. And yeah, I do think that matters. This reminds me, I thought we were going to go with it was like Rob Dillingham versus Tijan Salon, who's the number 6 pick. And, he probably played almost 30 minutes last night. And frankly, it looks even more, raw than Rob does, who's the 10th, 11th man probably on this team right now. I guess that one kind of works there too. It'll be, I think, much as it was with Ant and LaMelo, I think it'll be interesting to track with the rest of these young Wolves players. Like in 2-3 years from now, we ask ourselves, how do we think the Wolves being drafted by the Wolves impacted them? I do think for Josh Minott, like a year ago, we would have said poorly. There might be like two parts to this, right? Where if you're a top guy, if you're a LaMelo, you're an Ant, the team's being built around you. Maybe that continuity and that sort of focus of being a good team is really beneficial. But, if you're more of a guy just trying to make it, I think of like so many out of nowhere dudes, like how many bad teams did they come from? Lou Dort, right? Like they're early. Actually, no, the Thunder were kind of good right away there, but we know that. I like that. I put you in Portland, like Tumani Kamara. Like I like him, but like he was, I think it was a second round pick, maybe late second round pick. And he's got an opportunity in Portland and been, he's on our radars because of that. Whereas Josh Minott, like, is like the smallest blip on the greater NBA radar there. So yeah, that's not where I thought you were going to go with that, but I like that.
And this is tough, but like LaMelo is closer to Cam Thomas right now than he is to like Ant in terms of playing winning basketball. I mean, again, maybe I'm just caught in the prison of the moment, but there were just so many things last night that was like, that is really not smart basketball.
Yeah. Well, the thing, I watched a couple of their games, and this is I think a credit. What I'm going to do is give a credit to the Wolves. Like LaMelo has not looked like that in the other games that I've watched with them. And I mean, at a minimum, which we kind of know, like his shot making's been really impressive. I think in the other games I watched, like he's clearly trying more on defense than like the Borrego days and stuff like that. But I think I said this to Jace yesterday on the pod. It's like they had a chance to just win that game outright if they just did one thing, and that was cut off the head of the snake in the LaMelo Ball there by just sicking Jaden McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dante DiVincenzo, Anthony Edwards on him. And they did. They were switching 4, right? Like they were just keeping Rudy on like Taj, or whoever the big, quote unquote, big was for Charlotte, but they were switching everything else, right? So it'd be like LaMelo or Ant is on LaMelo. They set a screen with Jaden's guy. Okay, switch. Here's Jaden. Okay, switch again. Or now it's another pick and roll. Now it's Rudy Gobert. Like they particularly credit, I think, to Jaden, who, the 0-for-6 in the first half really pops, but I think he had a big role in just killing the one thing that could have killed the Wolves last night, which was LaMelo and Nickeil there too, Dante on down the line. Like this team has the ability, Kobe White on Thursday, more of these. There's just a level of really good offensive point guard or lead guard in the NBA that can have a bad game if you play great defense against them. And maybe some of the top guys, it's like, we're just trying to limit them, right? But you can throw off a LaMelo Ball. You can throw off a Kobe White. And if those teams are so directed towards them, then stopping that is a huge deal. And the Wolves still have the personnel to be able to do that this year, even if their defense as a whole is pretty clearly not at the same level it was before.
That's the best way to sum up our coverage of Timberwolves 114, Hornets 93.
Yeah.
is that they cut off the head of the snake. I think LaMelo finished with 2 assists and 5 turnovers. If you go back and look at any game, I think that LaMelo had more turnovers than assists. It's like 98% losses.
Right.
So they cut off the head of the snake. They did kind of have a nice job of resetting after a really poor performance against San Antonio that I'm sure we'll talk about here in a bit. But yeah, I just, I mean, you mentioned Josh, and then we'll move to your point. But like, yeah, Rob Dillingham's another one. Even Jaden. There's a lot of guys, not to continue to shit on the Hornets, but that would just be on your radar more. I mean, with this rookie class being off to a slow start production-wise, if Rob Dillingham was playing for the Hornets, he'd be leading Rookie of the Year like odds, and he doesn't play in Minnesota. Right. So, yeah, where you're drafted matters, and I think credit to Ant for what he's done to change the organization, and credit to the organization, in my opinion, for what they've done to help foster Ant to become a better leader and to become a super duper star.
I like that. My first takeaway from the first 2 weeks of the season is Mike Conley has to do way less this season. Yeah. You and I, we were texting about that a little bit last night. And I talked about it on the pod yesterday with Jace. That I don't know if it's my biggest takeaway, but it's my biggest like shift in thinking back, 40 days ago. Cat was traded for 39 days ago. And so 40 days ago, I'm sitting here, I'm looking, Wolves see him prepping for training camp, like looking at the depth chart, and the point guard depth chart was Mike Conley, Rob Dillingham, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And I'm like, a 37-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a guy that freaks me out of the idea of needing him to dribble, at a high frequency. That's what I was thinking 40 days ago. Nikhil's been way better as a point guard. That's helped in this process too, than I thought he was. But that was it. And that was a scary thing. And that just screamed Conley, Dillingham, Nickeil. That screamed Mike Conley is going to have to do even more this season than he did a season ago. But then, that trade happens and the roster complexion changes immensely. Dante DiVincenzo's the backup. Nickeil has been playing so well that Finch is like, screw it. Like, go play point guard. We just want you to play more. Get out there. And he's done that really well. And then the one I slept on was just Julius Randle as a point forward. Absolutely. I mean, how many possessions is he initiating as a primary, like the guy bringing the ball up the floor, initiating the initial action? Like, Julius Randle is a point guard too. And that's something, I mean, how many times did that happen with Cat? Like, I know the 11 times they ran like 4 or 5 pick and roll with him and Rudy over 2 years. Like, that never happened. And Randle is a point guard in that way. And so we got 4 guys getting reps at point guard in Conley, Dante, Nickeil, and Julius, I would say, not to mention Ant is involved in the mix. And then a 5th point guard played last night too, Rob Dillingham, who we thought was going to be the backup, but he played as the 5th kind of primary ball handler last night, and it was in garbage time. I just think how these first 7 games have played screams to me that Conley doesn't have to do as much. I asked him about that last night. I'll play this clip, and I'm curious your thoughts on it.
Does it feel like you have to do less this season, like in general? And if so, like, what is that like?
Yeah, it does. It's kind of weird right now. I'm in like a weird space because I'm used to having to do more and play more and being involved in actions a lot more. And we've got guys who, like I said, Nickeil, Dante, you go down the line. We got Julius and all these guys that you got to get going. And I'm like, man, I don't have to do much. I got to make my shots. I have to, make plays when I do get the ball, but just try to be effective as I can on both ends of the floor while I'm out there. And there will be moments in games where I do get more run or play later into the games. And just got to be ready for that. But like, these guys are taking a lot of pressure off of me and just letting me just feel my way through games. And I'm trying to adjust to that as best I can. And it's early, so I'm looking forward to the rest of the way.
Mike, now
it's been an interesting adjustment, right, Kyle? Like for our thinking, but even more so, obviously, for Mike, who 40 days ago, he was thinking the same thing, right? Like, this wasn't like, I don't think the Cat trade was like some burbling undertone of likelihood throughout, June, July, and August. It kind of like came together later, and so I think in September, Mike was like, my wrist hurts and I got to play 32 minutes a night this year. Like, that's not the case. And it's proving to be really different.
All right. 15 minutes in and I've gone off the agenda because you just said something really interesting. And I want to talk about Mike talking about being in a weird space. I think the Karl-Anthony Towns, Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo trade came out of absolutely nowhere. And we've talked about this enough. We're not really trying to emphasize it today, but the reason I think that is because they drafted Rob Dillingham to literally be the backup to Mike Conley.
Traded up to get, yeah.
But I mean, I don't really think that's like any, and I think Rob Dillingham at some point, he's 19 and we are 5.8% through the season. I want to emphasize that a little bit later, but I think they drafted him to be the backup point guard. And then 3 months later discovered that as of right now on November 5th, the second best player on the team might be Dante DiVincenzo. He has to play 30 minutes a night and he can do a lot of what Mike does. So when you think about that trade, I mean, Julius Randle and Carl play such different types of games, but I kind of think so far Julius has just kind of slid into like whatever slice size of pie Carl was getting. Julius is just getting that same amount of pie.
Yeah, just different flavor, kind of.
Yeah, but for Mike, it's like you get way less pie. And now, when he said he's in a weird space, I was thinking about Jaden. Talk about him in a little bit, but like I oblige me for a second because you've been at 6 of the 7 games so far. It like talk about the mental side of it. Or like, what do you think the mental side of it is of a guy like Mike Conley? Is like, okay, I took this pay cut. I'm such an important. I'm the straw that stirs the drink last year. Like when I'm off the court, it's like we have no adults out there unless Kyle's out there. And now for Mike, I think it is taking him a little bit, and that's probably why he was really bad for those first 4 or 5 games. Risk thing aside, is just he's trying to. There's multiple guys on this team that are trying to figure out what is a new role compared to, like you said, 40 days ago, right? Like Nikhil, Finch said, like Nikhil talked about all summer, we don't have a backup point guard. And like, okay, that's cool, but like, we don't really need you to do that. And he just has flourished. And now like, yeah, do whatever you want to do.
Right.
But with Mike, it's like, I don't know if Mike has found his niche yet. Like, I don't know if he knows, like, what do I do now? Because I don't need to bring the ball up. I can just go space and run a couple pick and rolls and take threes. Like, he has such less responsibility. And I think it has actually made his brain more cloudy.
I do too, or initially made it more cloudy, and maybe it's starting to clear a little bit. But yeah, I think for so many players, I think the initial reaction to that, particularly once it starts playing out and you start getting the ball less, and then when you're getting the ball less, you're not making your shots. Like, I would assume frustration would be the emotion, and like not even just frustration with himself for missing the shots, but like, wait a minute, like, what am I supposed to be doing here? And I know what I need, how I play that helps this team. I did it last year. I've done it since I was traded here, and that's just not what they want me to do anymore. And I track the rotations. I've counted this up, but Mike Conley has played a lot of stints this season that are under 6 minutes long. And that's tough. Like, that's just basketball. Like, that's particularly when you're not like really kind of feeling yourself. You're not comfortable. You're kind of getting your legs back under you after having a summer where you're dealing with some injury. Like, he just hasn't been able to catch a rhythm. And I think part of it may be natural. I guess I don't know. I don't want to put thoughts or words into his mouth. But for me, if I put myself in his shoes, what I would think about is just being a little bit, frustrated by that. But then it would switch for me of being like, wait a minute, this is only frustrating because we have so many other options that are good. It isn't, maybe it'd be real frustration, but it's like, nope, we're committed to playing Rob Dillingham 18 minutes a night, Mike. Sorry, like, your minutes are down. Like, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so knowing what Mike is in this for, which is winning a championship, I don't know how you can't sit back after 2 weeks and be like, yeah, I was frustrated the first 2 games, but go, this is probably good for my odds of winning a championship this season. And once I start playing better, maybe I will demand the ball a little bit more. And maybe Nikhil is a little bit less or whatever. There's certainly going to be a time when those 8 guys can't all play in the game. We saw that. Remember, every single time Ants missed a game pretty much in the last 2 years, what does Mike Conley do? It's like usage dial is up. Shot style is up. Like, I'm curious to see if he still has that gear or when he'll have that gear back. But But yeah, it's got to be a weird psychological thing for him, but hopefully, like we said, clearing going forward.
The Timberwolves backcourt right now, and this kind of segues into the second one I'll do after the break, but the Timberwolves backcourt reminds me of like an NFL pregame show where like even like a better analogy would be this pod. When we have Britt on and me and Britt do a pod from a hotel, there's just like less responsibility for me. I don't have to talk. You know what I mean? I don't have to talk as much, but it's hard for my dumb brain to like adjust to that in real time. And it takes a little bit to be like, oh, I don't have to talk much because Britt's going to talk about some 1975 like rock and roll performer. So I think for Mike, I mean, it's not like a long-term issue. It's just for now, he's figuring out I'm at this desk pregame with, instead of it's just being me and, you know, one other person, now there's like 5 people at the desk. And I just have to figure out, because again, if you just have less usage, I mean, I always think about this, whoever is still actively playing basketball, listening to this, if you just have less opportunities, it just amplifies those opportunities you get. So like if you miss your first 2 threes and you're Mike Conley, like, I might just not get another shot, but they might not need me to get another shot. So I think if you're listening in your car or whatever on Apple or Spotify, go watch the actual clip that Dane tweeted out, because Mike's reaction to your question was perfect. He's like, I'm liking this. It's cool, but I am kind of going through it right now. So
yeah. Let's grab our break here. We want to let you guys know that Kyle and I will be at Treasure Island Resort and Casino on Friday night, November 15th. We are doing a live show at the Parlay Lounge at Treasure Island at 8 p.m. We're going to get there early for like a 7 p.m. sort of happy hour. And then the Wolves play the Kings at 9 p.m. that night. It's one of those late West Coast tips. Friday night, we'll do the show. We'll hang out with everybody, watch the game there. And I mean, I guess the game will go till about 11:30, but we'll hang out there afterwards as well. I think this is going to be really fun. We've done a lot of live shows over the years, Kyle, but I don't know if we've ever done one there was a game that night too. So I'm really looking forward to it. You're flying in for it. Talk to me.
I just feel bad for the haters of people that don't like my content, because I have now graduated to talking about basketball at a casino. I am so giddy. This is when people say it's holiday season, this is my favorite holiday coming up. It's not Thanksgiving or Christmas. It is hosting a live show. And like you said, on the night of a game. So yeah, I think what we're going to do, the plan is to just, you know, mix it up for an hour, like meet and greet people, hang out, and then we'll hop on the mics. And I think we're going to try to be a little more engaging than even a normal show. Like we'll try to really fan interactions, questions, all that stuff. And then we're just going to watch the game. Mm-hmm. And then at halftime, we're going to go to a blackjack table. So it's going to be fantastic. We're going to stay up late because it is an egregious time. Tip off 9 p.m. Central time.
You're not used to these 9 p.m.
No, that's it's gonna be a 24-hour day for sure. But no, it's gonna be awesome, and we're really excited to partner with Treasure Island, and hopefully this thing can continue to blossom. But yeah, it's a Friday night. Again, the tip time is not great, but we tried to orchestrate this in a way that it's on a weekend.
Great for this, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I imagine like a 12:30 game. I'll just have to.
Well, even if it was 7, like it'd be hard. Because it is, and just for everybody, it's going to be like if you're coming from the city, it's like a 45-minute drive, you know, to come out for this. So hopefully, like that gives you some time, even to like have dinner at home or whatever, and come up. There is going to be free food at the Parlay Lounge too. So that's true for all their watch parties. But just be able to get down there, and hopefully by 7 for a happy hour live show 8. But even if you can't get there, until 8:39, like we're going to be there all night watching the game. If you do want to book a hotel room for that night, they're giving listeners 15% off rooms. You just got to call 1-888-867-7829. Mention code Dane, and they will give you 15% off your hotel stay for that night. That number and the code is, which is my name, is in the show notes there too. But just in case you're listening to this right now, you want to go back and be like, oh, I'm going to book a room later. That'll be in the show notes on YouTube or in the podcast version here. So, we're looking forward to it. November 15th. We'll tell you more about it in the coming week, and you can visit ticasino.com for more details. All right, Kyle, give me your second takeaway.
The starting lineup has been a popular conversation and something that I would imagine we continue to talk about moving forward, because it hasn't been great. A couple of guys in that starting lineup, Jaden McDaniels, Mike Conley, are off to slow starts. Again, 7, which is 4+3, their record. divided by 82 is 5.8%. So I would strongly encourage those who are worried about some of those guys to maybe, I don't know, give it a couple more weeks. But something that has become extremely apparent through the first 14 days of the season is that the Minnesota Timberwolves just have an elite championship bench. Jake Painting, our guy at House and Growls, did a really good video overnight. And
I have a son here too.
Yeah. And they, I mean, the bench right now, and we can talk about rotation stuff. It really is an 8-man rotation with Joe Ingles or Josh Minott getting a couple reps every now and then. But Dante DiVincenzo, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Naz Reid are playing at such a high level. And again, one more shameless plug of Jake. If you go watch that video, that's a 5.5-minute video on YouTube. Those 3 guys just never stop moving. Mm-hmm. And I got to credit Jake because I didn't catch this in real time, but like after a made bucket, they're bringing the ball up. Naz immediately, like at 22 seconds into the shot clock, sets a screen. And then DDV like rolls off that. And then Nickeil back. They're just constantly moving. And it is like it has to be the dream, the wet dream of how Chris Finch wants basketball to be played. And those 3 guys make me not as worried about what the starting lineup is doing right now. Talk to me in January. But for now, it's like you need a championship level bench to win a title. And I think you can cross that box off for now of like, hey, we'll iron out some of the, the top 5 guys, but 6 through 8. I mean, this is probably hyperbolic. Is there a better 6 through 8 in the league?
No, I mean, there's not one that has a plus 29.5 net rating, as those 3 do. I had this down as one of my takeaways too. I did it. My title for mine was a little bit different. It's there's just no way the Wolves' best lineup is their starters, is what I wrote down. Right.
Okay.
And then I'd put in parentheses right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure. It just doesn't feel like the best combination of 5 players you can put out with this team is Mike Conley, Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Julius Randle, and Rudy Gobert. And that really, I don't mean as an indictment of any of those 5 guys. I mean it in a way of how it's stitched together and just frankly how they're like producing when that group is out there. It just is off in ways that it's not off when 2 or 3 of those guys are on the floor. You said, Jake's tweet was there's the only 3-man group that has outscored their opponents, has a positive net rating for the Wolves. That's, did I say already played over 100 minutes? Is Nickeil, Dante, and Naz. And they have a net rating of plus 29.5. Everyone else is not positive. They've been outscored, or there's one group that's 0 even. And that's encouraging to your point about the bench being awesome. But how I think my point kind of feeds into that is there's been a ton of other 3-man pairings that include 2 of those bench guys and 1 of the starters, and they've been great. Ant, Dante, and Naz, awesome. Naz, Dante, and Rudy has been good. Dante, Nickeil, and Ant, really good. Nickeil, Dante, and Rudy has been great. Naz, Dante, and Randle it's like plus 14. Not great, but positive, and it's one that has Randle in it. Naz, Nickeil, and Ant has been good. And then Naz, Na, and Rudy, they've played 62 minutes together. Naz, Na, and Rudy. And they've won those minutes by 62 points. So, do you get what I'm getting at in that it's I saw Jake's tweet too, and that's what got me on this. So again, shout out to Jake. Go watch that. Subscribe to Howls and Growls. But what's encouraging to me is the ellipses, and it works with other guys too, which leads me to believe, and I'm curious, it's just one of those things that seems kind of goofy, but these are the breadcrumbs that get laid down before a change. And a change that you wouldn't have expected in training camp or whatever. And it just feels like, to me, something weird is going to happen. And I mean that in a good way, where we're just like, the one everybody pointed to before the season, which didn't make sense, was, all right, just, Randle, have him off the bench. He's your 6-man bucket guy, And I didn't think, for getting acclimated reasons, that made sense. I still don't really think that's the answer there. But I think there's some way, and I don't have it pinned down exactly what I think it is yet, but I think they're going to make some sort of wrinkle in time to the starting lineup that changes sort of the fabric of all of this, that gets them to be playing lineups for 48 minutes or closer to 48 minutes that they feel good about, rather than what's happening now where there's these pockets of time where it's awesome and terrible, and just kind of smoothing that out. It feels like almost a starting lineup change has to happen for that to happen. That's kind of where I'm at on it.
Yeah. The Timberwolves do kind of feel through 2 weeks. Again, it's just been 2 weeks, but and this is no slam against who is an actual friend of mine offline, but the Timberwolves kind of feel like they're doing that OKC starting lineup with Kendrick Perkins, where like he got to start and get the tip, and then like 3 minutes into the game, they would sub him out, and then they would have like a death lineup back in the day. But let's be a little more specific on this, because I think they have a championship bench. I think Finch referenced last night post game to all you guys that they have 8 starters.
Yep.
Like that's probably the best way to phrase this conversation. I am biased. And speaking of Jake, I don't go online much. I just messaged Jake throughout the game, and it's been a tough couple of weeks. A lot of hurricanes on Jaden McDaniel's island. But I think you would pull the trigger and put Mike on the bench if this happens down the road before you would do it with Jaden, because I think Mike can handle it.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Agree.
I think Mike can mentally handle it a little more than Jaden could in buying into a role. Jaden McDaniels might be the worst performing player on the team through the first 7 games. You saw him kind of come to life last night a little bit. It was really cool. You were at the game. I was watching on TV, but like Grady and Jim were like talking through it about like, hey, you got to keep going to it. You can't just cut him off. So I think you're on to something. It might not happen this week, but the bench having those type of splits and the numbers is like, okay, it's not just those 3 guys doing their own pod. It's that you could take one of them and put them on any show, and like they're still really good.
I think so too. And I think the main lineup we're seeing that is like that is, do you remember, like, I remember in the Denver game, it was clear that like Rudy subbed out early, and it was this idea of like, okay, the non-Jokic minutes are going to start in the second quarter, right? And we're going to come loaded for that second unit. And they did. What was like 11-0 run or something like that to start that quarter. And what that group was Mike, Nikhil, Dante, Naz, and Rudy. And that has been the lineup that's been out there for the start of the second quarter and the start of the fourth quarter for the games, the subsequent games going forward, and then last night as well. Mike was asked about that after the game, and I think it's interesting how thrilled he was about the idea of that group. And then I asked about how the starters don't have it. So I just want to play this clip. I thought it was interesting.
The comfort level, like with that second unit lineup that started the second and fourth, it seems like that's really a group that's clicking.
Yeah, I honestly do. I think we're clicking well. We actually get excited when we know we're all coming in the game. It's just like a little group of guys, and we don't know who's going to be the guy who's going to score, who's going to be the guy who has the moments, but just playing free and unselfish, and moving as fast as we can, talking as much as we can, try to create an identity for that little moment that we're out there that's different from the start, that's different from later in the second or later in the third. So I think we're going to keep growing, and hopefully we can rely on that unit for games to come.
Isn't that the feeling that starters need? Is that what you say? You need to inject some of that?
Yeah, I think we will get that. I think it's something that it just takes time. We're implementing. Like I said, Julius Randle is a lot different than Cat, just the way they play. So Rudy's got to get used to that. We got to get used to the spacing. We got to get used to how we can play off of each other better, which will take time. And when we do figure it out, it'll be we blend that with the way the second unit has a jump start. That's when you get really good consistent performances, I think.
Do you get why I asked that, Kyle? Of like, you need that energy and that enthusiasm about that second group that needs to be in the first group. I was just thinking of the starting group, like who of those 5, when it's the starting 5 out there, is like, yeah, I like my role in this group. It's Ant, right? It's just Ant.
Yeah.
Right? Ant's like, I'll just hit like fucking 5 threes, like that's it. Other than that, nobody is it doesn't seem clean at all. It's like, and it's not been terrible. It just, we've done this before. Like, I know it's only 7 games, but there's been plenty of times since we've been covering this team. It's just like, that's not the group. That's not a group. Like, that's not the group. And I don't know. Maybe that will come. It's not, again, my parentheses here is right now. Maybe it comes. So right now, that's no way the Wolves' best lineup is the starting 5.
Correct. But can we talk about your fantasy league a little bit? Because the one thing that I keep emphasizing, this 5.8%, is that Dane is in a very unique fantasy football league with his friends, where every single week you'll text me like, hey, I'm trying to trade for a running back this week. You make, in a 17-week season, 17 massive blockbuster transactions every week, where it's like Mahomes for Carr and Kamara. Like every week, Dane's doing this. That's not how you can do this in the NBA.
All right, that's fair pushback.
No, I'm not even really. I'm just saying, like, you can't just be like, Jaden has been ass for 14 days, bench him.
No, that's why I'm with
how
the
this
like.
Works.
I'm with the Mike idea. Again, I'm not even suggesting one thing or
the other. I'm not even yelling at you. I'm yelling at.
Sorry. I'm just saying, like, it just feels to me like something's going to change. I don't know what it is, and maybe it's too incongruent and it's too bold of a step to do. But
or maybe it's not that bold. Maybe it's the fact that Mike and Jaden have been 2 of the worst rotation players through the first 7 games, and one of them's making 50% less than he did last year. One of them making 400% more than he did last year. And politics matter, whether or not you care or whether or not you live on Twitter. Like, guess what? Locker rooms exist too, and chemistry, and on the bus. And you can't just sit Jaden. And yes, I'm biased, but what Grady and Jim, go back and listen to that last night after Jaden was 0 for 6. They were like, Jim was saying, like, you have to keep feeding him. You have to keep feeding him. And all of his teammates trusted him, and then he kind of had a little spurt there, and then the game was over. Did
it pick up on the broadcast of when Jaden came out mad at the end of the second quarter?
No, go into that.
Thing? Yeah, well, so actually, I didn't see it. Somebody kind of tipped me to it when I was at the game. It was like, hey, did you? It was at halftime. Dave, who works with Alan Horton, and that, you know, Jaden went and was very frustrated. He went back to like danger tunnel, right? Like,
oh no, Jaden, tunnel. Put your hands in your pocket.
But he stopped at the bike, but he's frustrated over there. And Mike immediately followed him over there and talked to him afterwards. And Jaden was 0 for 6. And then he kind of comes out, like you said at the beginning. Jaden had a much better second half. He was 3 for 4 from the field, had 9 points. It was first real like rhythm. It seemed like he'd been in there. So I think, you know, that's not totally related to what we're talking about starting Mike or what group he needs to play in. Like, Mike still has that. That's a unique ability, and his ability to communicate, especially to the young players and have them listen. And I don't even think he wasn't getting mad at Jaden. He was just giving them support. Right. And that Mike makes a difference in that way every single day. Like, that is just, well, how long has Mike been here now? You know, almost 2 years, right? Like, he comes up in every conversation I have about, oh, you know, how do you think this guy's going to work in here, or this, or how's this guy coming? And Mike comes up either Mike's going to work well with them, Mike's going to help him get it, Mike's gonna, and it just, we don't know those things because we're not like in practices, in, you know, in huddles and all that sort of stuff. Like, there's a huge value to Mike in that way too. That, yeah, even if he is someday not the starter, like maybe we're kind of suggesting, it doesn't mean he doesn't still have an instrumental role as a player, but also as what he is, you know, the vet there. Yeah, I'm just curious to see where it goes.
Give me like 30 more seconds on Jaden, because it'll actually pivot into my third one. But I just, if he's still playing like this come Christmas, then yes, like real conversations need to be had. But you can't have those conversations after 7 games. Yep. You can't, you know, like, you can't be like, he's on. Right, we're doing it now. You can't just say he's unplayable, because I thought last night the barometer was kind of interesting, that he was terrible. 0 for 4 from 3, missed that layup in transition. And they were able to just keep their head above water and swimming and slowly building a lead. And then when he finally clicked and had like a 9-point burst in, I think, the third, then it was just over. Right. And like, back to, we've always mentioned that he's the barometer. I mean, I think it's better to say he's the barometer of the offense than he is like Scottie Pippen 2.0 right now.
Sure.
But he might be Scottie Pippen's kid at this point from a production standpoint. But I think you got to lean into him a little more because of the mental side of it, because you do need him. And that kind of transitioned into my third one of, when Jaden's out, because I mean, a lot of people right now just want to start Nickeil in Jaden's spot. And I don't love that for multiple reasons, but I also just think too, your team becomes really small. Like, I don't think Nickeil is the backup Jaden at like any means. If you're going to pull minutes from Jaden, I think the backup Jaden, and this is where I'll turn to you because you are the smartest basketball person I know. I think the backup Jaden is Josh Minott. And I just like, he can't defend as well as Jaden and, you know, all this stuff. But there's something in his eye when I saw him come in last night with 8 minutes left in the fourth. He's not part of the rotation. It was kind of garbage time. He just looks different to me. And I think my third takeaway is that Josh Minott just somehow, some way needs to play a little more. I think that rebound he had, I think it was in the Spurs game maybe, was like a big boy rebound that you don't see him do. He seems really focused. He's on the floor. He's putting his body in his harm's way. He's trying to get blocks. I just think if this continues to have stale portions of the game, I think Josh brings an energy that is a little more controlled or strategic. I don't think Josh had any idea what he was doing the first couple of years, and he copped to that at media day. But if this rotation does, and it has to, eventually grow to 9, and again, I'm a Rob Dillingham stan, but I think Josh should be the first guy off the bench after those big 3. And I think that has to come sooner or later because I just think he gives you some stuff that we don't even know what it is yet, but it seems like positive stuff.
You know what that sounds like, Kyle? Naz Reid from 3 years ago.
Bingo.
And Naz Reid is the like, everything went perfect and it got there. But Josh Minott has like, there's so many similarities. They're both signed out like to their first deal where it was that Hinkie Gupta special, right? 4-year minimum, only the first year's guaranteed. And they got to kind of work to keep making the minimum every single year for the first 4 years. And you remember 3 years ago, the third year of Naz's, that's a 22-23 season after they trade for Gobert. And Naz is not in the rotation, like to start that year. And then a year later, he wins 6th man of the year. But it's just the fit at the beginning of that season of Naz didn't quite make sense to Finch, or where do we put this in? How do we put this in and in place of who? And eventually Naz just kind of forced his way in there because there was so much of what I think you're describing with Josh popped to them from a tenacity, a commitment. Like you look at, you know, Naz's body went from 290 to 240 or 235. And I don't know what Minott weighed at the beginning, but hey, you see him out on the floor. Like he's taller than when he came and he is upper body way bigger. Remember we were like, I think maybe Josh Minott's like going to be guarding wings. I mean, he's a guard, like a wing. Josh Minott looks like a modern NBA 4 right now. And I don't know if he's going to have the Naz trajectory and get to that point. It's unlikely, right? That very rarely happens. But there's so many similarities to that, that I see just at least, again, in the breadcrumbs, to use that analogy again. And I asked Naz about it after the game. I don't have the clip, but I was like, hey, have you been in Josh's ear some too? And he's like, he was like, absolutely. He's like, and, it was kind of cliche answer. He's like, stay ready. It was interesting in his answer though. He goes, yeah, Josh didn't even know he was going to play in San Antonio. Isn't that kind of interesting?
Yeah. Okay.
Like Finch just sprung it. He just sprung it in San Antonio. Like, Josh, all right, you're in. I think that's kind of how Finch works too. Maybe kind of how he worked with Naz back a couple of years ago. I love it. Generally speak, I get the idea. I'm still like running the math on the minutes and stuff like that, where I don't really get how you get Minott minutes because everyone's wish has become true. Joe Ingles isn't playing for 4 minutes a night anymore. Like I don't think that's gonna fulfill what you're asking for of the Minott stuff. But yeah, like the next time anyone is feeling like really anxious about Dillingham's not playing, Minott's not playing, like just Google NBA injury report right now and look at all the other teams. Guys a lot of teams have a bunch of injuries already. Like, unfortunately, that's going to happen to the Wolves too. And Josh is going to get an opportunity there. I do not want to see Josh get an opportunity at the cost of Naz, Nickeil, or Dante minutes right now at all.
Put a pin in that. That'll be my last one. But back to my Jaden, maybe Josh is the backup to Jaden. Tell me, because this has been something that's been brewing on my end, and tell me if you agree. I just think, and Jaden's been terrible, but when you take Jaden out, you just have, in my mind, whoever else you play, Nas, Nikhil, DDV, whatever, you're just kind of small. Like Julius Randle is 6'8", and Cat's 7 foot. So that's why, like, I just like having size on the perimeter, and that's what I think Josh brings. Apparently, according to Google, which is so not reliable anymore, Josh and Julius are the same height. Do you think Josh Minott is the same height as Julius Randle?
I think he's taller.
Okay. And again, that's just like my
I mean, not like by a lot, but kind of like how I always said Jaden McDaniels was taller than Cat. That was just true. Like,
yeah.
You know, I mean, marginally or the same. Like, yeah.
I just like having another tall, gangly wing out there, even if they're both going to just brick threes. I just, again, if you really have nothing to do.
Okay, so you just said in place of Jaden.
No, if you take those minutes away at some point, if again, like I said, at Christmas time, it's still the Jaden thing is just not figured out. That would be the way that I would start to insert some minutes. I just don't think you can shorten the leash on Jaden after 14 days, maybe after 28, maybe after 42, but not right now. But if that time does come, that's, I mean, it's kind of a Josh Minott, Rob Dillingham battle in my mind too, but that's the guy that I would put in first because I think he fills a specific need. And again, if you don't want to watch TV today on the 5th, go back and watch Josh's minutes last night. Dane, we've probably watched more Minott stuff than anyone just because a lot of it's in Summer League. And he looks more focused and he looks like he's doing the stuff, when I say stuff, that wins basketball games. Diving for the floor, trying to block a shot. It might end up in a foul. Who cares? Like what? Jaden's not fouling people. So I thought that rebound against the Spurs, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, dude.
That was a really.
And then he went and scored on the other side.
Yeah, like he went up and got that rebound. That was a really big moment for me for Josh, who again is like 20, 21 years old. And like you said, is on the Nas contract. Yeah. So if someone in the rotation does get hurt, I think Josh should be the first one to get a chance.
Here's the Minott rebound and bucket.
That's just a bit, I mean, that's not what he did in the first couple of years. And he's obviously added some size and some strength, but he gets that rebound. He spaces. I like this one quick move and then just a nice little layup. That should have been a dunk, Josh. But and then
he went a little hard with the Rudy lob a couple possessions before that. So he's like, maybe I'll just touch this one in there.
On YouTube, Dane just showed that kind of, it was all one, gets the rebound, gets out in transition, gets the basket, and you cut the video off right before. Then he showed a bunch of energy. Yeah. And then he was amped about it. And guys came over to him. And I think DDV in that game was in his ear. Like Mike was in Jaden's ear last night. DiVincenzo was talking to him like, hey, because I think he missed DiVincenzo on like a kick out. But it's just, I really like what Josh has shown in limited minutes. And while I don't think he should play maybe right now, because Finch wants to hammer home this 8-man rotation, he should place him.
Yeah, nope. I'm with that. And I think it will come because Josh, which is different than Rob. I think if any of the 8 guys get hurt, you can just put Josh into the rotation and move, you know what I'm saying? Move up or down accordingly. Obviously, if Julius Randle gets hurt, I don't think you're putting Rob Dillingham into the rotation and sliding everything up. So yeah, I would expect Josh, and I'm excited for when that happens. It's like the classic middle of the season shit we get into, like that'll be fun. My last one is Rudy Gobert's passing being better. And what I think that sounds dumb or unimportant. It really does. I get it. It's just, Kyle, the Denver series. What did it look like? How did they guard Rudy Gobert? And the answer is they didn't. Because he would set a screen and then he would go to the middle of the floor. And there'd be the low man down there, like at the basket. But they were like, go ahead, Rudy. Try something. Anything. You caught it at 9 feet. We don't care. Because we are choosing to prioritize stopping Karl-Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, and the shooters that surround him. And that was a good strategy by the Denver Nuggets. Weirdly, Rudy hits that Hakeem sort of thing in Game 7. And I've gone back and watched it. Like, they kind of start caring about him more, which was probably not a good idea and probably part of the reason why they lost. But for the majority of that series, they didn't care what Rudy did in the middle of the floor at all. And that was fair and smart because he couldn't do anything in the middle of the floor with a consistency of effectiveness. Remember, I was on my big like push shot thing, even at the beginning of last season, because Rudy has to be able to do something when he catches the ball at 8 feet or not at the rim. All Denver cared about was don't let him catch it at the rim. he has to be able to do something. And you know what? He tried the push shot last year, and I got excited every time he took it, and it didn't work. And so he's pretty much bagged that. I mean, he'll get a couple of those like late shot clock, whatever. He'll take some, and maybe, who knows, maybe that's something he's gotten better at. But I'm seeing Rudy, particularly in short roll situations, catching in the middle of the floor and finding the shooter on the opposite side. I'm seeing him catching the ball underneath the basket and offensive rebounds, and in situations where he tried to do a weird, like, sort of hook shot with the wrong hand and miss it sort of thing. Way more often is he finding the kick out to the perimeter, and he's looking for that. And you could see that right away, a change at the beginning of the season. I've talked about it multiple times this year because I notice it all the time. And he's not only doing it, but he seems more comfortable with it in that area. And there's going to still be the sloppy sort of like post up things like that. I still don't know why they direct post him up, but it got so bad of last year when he would catch at 8 feet and then he just kind of try and roll his guy into a post up. It's not good. It's just not going to be an effective move. And it seems to me like that truth has come through to Rudy a little bit more. And he's determined a good path of what to do in that spot, which is be somebody who continues the movement of the action. And it doesn't just die when Rudy catches it at 9 feet and the offense is flat there. I asked Finch about it after the game.
Is that something you've worked with him on, or wanting to be part of it, also being
well, he knows. Yeah, we have made it a point of emphasis. We work on it, of course. Teams, some teams will have, in the past have dared us to throw it to Rudy in those situations. We know that for us to be a complete team, we have to be able to make those plays. And Rudy's done a really good job of making the next play out of it. So it's just one of those kind of sequences of trust, and we're seeing, the benefits of it. I thought we saw a lot of those good opportunities in the playoffs too. So,
what sequence of trust reminds me of there, Kyle? Remember year one, Rudy only wanted to play defense the Utah way. Mm-hmm. And then over the course of the season, in a sequence of trust building, they got Rudy to adjust the way he was willing to guard in the 23-24 season. And the Wolves went from a mediocre defensive team to clearly the best defensive team in the league. So Rudy's 32 years old. And there's parts of his game that clearly need to evolve and clearly need to get and be better. And that's always been the case. He wouldn't be the first player in his 30s to have parts of his game that need to get better and never get better. And I'm just saying, this is a little thing. It seems like a little thing. It sounds dumb. Rudy Gobert's passing is better. I promise you that's going to matter against good teams in the regular season when they have a really scripted way of guarding the Wolves. And it's definitely going to matter in the playoffs. And if Rudy, not even as it doesn't even need to be like anything special there, but just like Finch said, keep the action moving. That didn't happen last year. And that's a big part of the reason why the Wolves were a below average offensive team. I think this is part of the equation of the Wolves being a top 10 offense this year.
Rudy Gobert passing. That was Dane's third one. This whole podcast revolves around the first 2 weeks and our biggest takeaways. Can we talk about that one for like another minute, but kind of make it more broad or more vague?
Oh, yeah.
I just think Rudy Gobert is in the Patrick Beverley, Kyle Anderson, Rudy Gobert. I don't like your game. And then you have a 612 area code. And now I will take a bullet for you. He is, I talked about at the top, right? How you bring Anthony Edwards into the organization and how it could be so much different if he was on the Nets or the Hornets and maybe he's just Cam Thomas. Rudy Gobert was brought in to rebound and defend. And I also think Rudy Gobert was brought in to change the culture just as much as Ant and win games. We didn't get to talk after the Nuggets won that they win, but we were texting all night. We were texting all weekend. That was like, and I tweeted this out, that was like the quintessential Rudy Gobert experience, right?
Yep.
Play good basketball. You're asked now, there's no Carl. So now you have to guard Jokic a lot. You get yammed on 10 minutes of internet memes and all this stuff. And then a two-way sequence where he hits those 2 free throws. He's shooting a 6-year best from the free throw line. I know it's a small sample, but he's shooting over 70% from the free throw line. And then he goes and just isolates the best player in the league, still Nikola Jokic, and forces them into an incredibly tough 3. I just think Rudy Gobert is the most professional player, not only on this roster, but that they've had since probably Kevin Garnett was here. And there can't be enough said about him. And it was crazy because you were giving me shit about not being online. I sent that out, and then I had like the craziest amount of death threats about like, oh, how many rings he's got. Like, okay, whatever. But I love watching him play because there's so many things. Like, go watch like on YouTube after a game. You can just type Timberwolves versus whatever, and you'll see all the made baskets. Go watch how many made baskets just come off of like a Rudy screen or like another screen. Like, he just does so much stuff. And I think to your passing comment, he's just embraced. I mean, he's averaging, I think he's played 12 years. This might be his 13th year. This is only the second time he's averaged 2 assists a game. Really nitpicky here, but I just think like he's figuring out, okay, this is what they need me to do. They need me to now just protect the rim, get rebounds, be the green dot on defense, and then also just maybe increase my passing a little bit. And he's done everything they've asked of him since he's arrived. And a lot of the credit still goes to Ant, and rightfully so, but I have learned more, or I've been proven more wrong because I didn't really get the Rudy Gobert thing in Utah. And now that he's here and I watch him, that man just epitomizes winning basketball.
Yeah, I absolutely co-sign it. It's like we didn't do it. The game was so late on Friday night, right? So we didn't. So we and then they had a back-to-back, and then they had a back-to-back in San Antonio. But yeah, the Denver game was one of my favorite Rudy games
ever.
Yeah, but then San Antonio game was rough, So then I was like, yeah,
you were no, because it was a late game Friday, and this will kind of segue. But what time did you leave Target Center Friday night after the nationally televised game, Wolves Nuggets?
1:45.
So I'm not giving a pass. But this is kind of going to translate into my bonus one, because my bonus takeaway was: do NBA fans actually like watching NBA games? Because they win last night and they blow out the Hornets. But I saw after like the Nuggets game, people being, I didn't have any fun watching that game. Or like the Wolves beat the Nuggets, which is the closest thing they have to a rival. It's not Dallas, because the Wolves have not done much against Dallas, by the way. Our predictions, Jaden being the second best player, the Wolves sweeping the Mavs. For 2 starts so far.
Yep.
But I just couldn't believe how negative people were after that. And then they go to San Antonio and shit the bed. But I wanted to ask you, because you texted me at 2 a.m. leaving Target Center. And it's like, that was one of the weirdest. I just kind of throw the Spurs game out. That's another take. Like, I just throw that out because it was such a weird. Should they have played more young guys? Maybe. Should they have just punted? I don't know. But I think it's really important to clear up that I think the Wolves got into San Antonio like 4:30 in the morning. And that was just kind of a schedule loss early in the season.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I said that yesterday when Jason and I were talking about it. It was just, and maybe I reacted to it too much on that one. It was just, I didn't like the approach. I didn't like the approach to defense at all in that game. And maybe that is just a fatigue thing. And then it was just startling to me how much Wemby deletes Rudy.
Yeah, that one's tough.
It's just, and I mean, I don't know what to say other than that. Like, Rudy's awesome, but I'm interested to watch them play the Spurs again. I'll say that, because they got a little, and this was stupid and wrong last year, but remember we were kind of doing the like, I don't know about the Pelicans as a first round matchup. Like, remember we were kind of in the middle of the season, we were like worried about that. Like, it's super early and everything you just said about the back-to-back and stuff like that. But there's an element of the Spurs where I go, ooh, don't like that. I don't like how the Wemby Gobert thing and how much Rudy is neutralized and how important he is. And then I just don't like this team in pick and roll coverage against, particularly when Rudy's off the floor. I mean, Chris Paul against a Naz Reid and Julius Randle front court scares shit out of me. Like, that's buckets, and it was in that game. So I'm just putting a little pin in that, and you know how this works. Like, the last thing in your head dominates your thoughts, right? And so like the Rudy game was so great against Denver, and then that happened. I'm like, I don't know. I let that spill over a little bit too much, probably.
Okay, the hour mark. So again, I said, do NBA fans actually like watching their NBA team?
Yeah.
I kind of want to go back because we're 2 weeks in. They're 4-3, and just a little overtime vibe check of do you think the Wolves should be anything other than 4-3 through the first 7 games?
No.
Like, I don't know, you kind of like that Lakers game you and I were in attendance. That was JJ Redick's debut, the Bronny James thing, whatever. Like, that just was a game that,
and Julius Randle's debut.
Yeah, and I just think the Wolves were supposed to lose that game. I think they were probably supposed to lose to the Spurs on that second night of a back-to-back. I just bring it up because yesterday a mutual friend of ours texted me like 3 hours before the Hornets Timberwolves game saying, is tonight a must win?
Was it Steven?
No. And I was just, I've seen people be like, this team just isn't. And I don't know if it's still cat ramifications or whatever, but just like they're not having fun. And I just keep bringing up this 5.8%. I know it's annoying, but it's like, I shouldn't say this because you and I are about to do 12 pods in the next 15 days, but I just really don't care until like Christmas. Like, I just really want to see, because people referenced last year of like what their record was 4, 5, 6, 7 games in. Like, but that was different. It's like, no, it wasn't different. Like, I just want to see, and maybe that means building up the rotation, or maybe we were both wrong and Finch wants to hammer home the first 8 guys in the pecking order, because there's still some weird stuff at times with Julius and Ant when they're out there. And like, okay, let's figure out 1 through 8. And then, as your point about injury reports, come Christmas time, we'll open up the packages and there's a Rob Dillingham and there's a Josh Minott or whatever. Like, it's going to expand, but I just don't. I mean, what if they were 5-2? Would people be happier? Like, or like if they would have played Rob Dillingham and Josh Minott 30 minutes a night against the Spurs?
I mean, I just think the experience of covering, or particularly being a fan of a team that has had success, high level success, as the Wolves did, the regular season's tough, man. I mean, like, we got some friends out in Denver where I was talking about how I was listening to the Adam and Harrison on that pod before. And it's probably the team specific podcast I listened to, the most, and over the past couple of years too. And I really do think that's been the Denver experience. And it certainly is now too, where it's like, the ship feels like it's sinking more in the regular season when it's a really nice ship, Yeah. And like they take some cannonballs over the course of the year. Like that's just how it goes. And I know, and I'm guilty of the reactions and doing all those things too. I think, part of it is I'm just trying to do 4 shows a week. I'm not trying to overreact, but like sometimes when you're just trying to like do stuff, you're like, this is what I'm seeing right now. And I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It's like, this is what I'm seeing right now. I don't think at any point I've been like, my view of what the ceiling of this team is or anything is massively changed. It hasn't. I still think there's absolutely a path to getting there. I just think it's through the things that go wrong that we find the things that could eventually go right. That's always been my approach to this. And sometimes you point at something like, this is wrong, and it's not actually wrong. And, and I've definitely done that, but I think sometimes too, I think it's what coaching staffs are doing. I think it's what front offices are doing. And you're trying to build the plane on the runway. Like that's welcome to the NBA,
I learned way more after that Nuggets win than I did after that Hornets win. But seriously, like, because you had some really great, and again, shout out to Dane, because Dane's got a nice camera now, so he's in the locker room with video. But there was like a really good answer about just kind of sleepwalking through quarters. And I rewatched that Nuggets game for the 3rd time. I thought they just basically outplayed them the whole game and just sleptwalked a little bit, but they looked like the better team in that situation. And to come away from that being like, I didn't enjoy watching that. It's like, I love that, because I saw what this team is like when they're really good against a good opponent, not the Hornets. And then their flaws, which 3 years ago would have probably had a completely different answer than the mature response he had of like, some of that is on me of just daydreaming through the 3rd quarter. So I thought that was, I'm happier that they beat the Nuggets and lost to the Spurs than I would have been if they would have lost to the Nuggets and beat the Spurs. You know what I mean? So 4-3, maybe they should be 5-2, maybe some guy should be getting a little minutes. Again, Rob Dillingham is probably the point guard of the future, but he can't buy Tito's for 2 years. So like, let's just give him a little bit, right? Josh Minott the same way. Like, I know that he's been here for a hot minute, but he could be averaging 20 minutes a game come Thanksgiving. Just, you never know with the injuries. So for now, I think Finch, I was wrong on this, because like, hey, start the season with 10, take your lumps. I think this coaching staff wants to hammer home with the guys who are going to take them down the road as far as they can go. Like, I want them to figure it out first, and then we'll sprinkle in the other guys. But I think 4-3 is probably the right record for this team through the first 7 games, and we'll see where they are 7 games from now. I mean, their schedule coming up is they play a lot of the Blazers, a lot of Blazer games coming up. But yeah, I think you're going to start to see this team hopefully start to chew up some lesser opponents like they did last night. I mean, pretty much a flawless performance last night against the Hornets. And now you try to build off that coming up against the Blazers and the Bulls, although the Bulls have their number. But a lot of easy games coming up for you to now try to figure out your rotation, figure out roles, and hopefully get some of the guys that have slowed down like Mike and Jaden to kind of pick it up a little bit.
4 and 3. Is that how many takeaways we did? You did 4 and I did 3. Should I do
that
seven?
Is,
Seven takeaways. Is that the title?
7 takeaways through 7 games. A little production meeting there.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks, and Kyle and I. When Kyle's on, we like to wrap up the show with a couple of Prize Picks that we are looking at. As a reminder, I'm a lot better at picking basketball Prize Picks than I am football. Last night, I think I did my first one. It's hard because, the Wolves games come up on their like day of. And so we were doing a day of pod yesterday, but I had Jaden less than 3.5 rebounds and Naz Reid to have more than 17.5 points plus rebounds. And Jaden had 3. So that one hit, and Naz had 34 total. He had 25 points and 9 rebounds last night. So both of those went through. No basketball tonight, NBA or Wolves or the entire NBA days off. So we're going to do a little early, do our Thursday night football Prize Picks. Do you have 2 that you are ready to share?
I do. We're doing this on a Tuesday. So whenever this pops into your feed, Prize Picks also has Taco Tuesday where they discount some players. I think today it's like NHL and stuff. No basketball games, as Dane said, but looking ahead to the Thursday slate, or I'm going to just break the rules here and go into a Sunday game. Because he's on the board right now, I like Aaron Jones over 71.5 rushing yards against the Jags. If anyone watched that Sunday night game, I think you saw that Aaron Jones just needs to be, he's like Rudy Gobert. He's a winning player that they trust. He's not going to throw the ball into triple coverage. So that should be a game where the Vikings are probably favored by like 6 or 7 against a really bad Jags team. Run the ball, establish the run, Aaron Jones. But then for this Thursday night game, man, just whatever Derrick Henry's rushing total is, just click more. 93.5, whatever, more. Okay, until he is doing things at an age in his 30s that I can't even believe. He's just so much fun to watch. Bengals Ravens is going to be an awesome game. But yeah, I just think give him the ball earlier and often, and he'll break one loose for 40-50 yards. So Derrick Henry over 93.5 rushing yards. Aaron Jones 71.5 rushing yards.
I have 2 from the Thursday night game. Just Jamar Chase, anytime TD is just even here. I like that. Chase he has a touchdown in 5 of the 8 weeks, 7 total touchdowns on the season in 8 weeks. Ravens have the number 32 pass defense. Burrow threw 5 touchdowns last week, not 1 to Chase. I think that team's starting to click. I just think it's pretty clearly an over 50% proposition that Jamar Chase will score a touchdown in Thursday Night Football. And then they do rushing plus receiving yards. I'm going to say Chase Brown more than 85.5 rushing plus receiving yards. He had 157 total yards this week. That was without Zach Moss. They again won't have Zach Moss. I think they traded for Khalil Herbert yesterday, but I like Chase Brown to have close to 100 total yards in this game. So that one makes sense to me, as does the Jamar Chase one. So if you're looking at the screen here, that's 4 picks. So if all between me and Kyle, so if all 4 of those things come true, your dreams come true. If you bet $5, you win 50 on that. You can, if you don't have an account, you can go to prizepicks.com or the PrizePicks app, use the promo code Dane when you sign up, and they will credit your account with $50 when you make your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, like I've said, it's been a fun thing for us to text about, and even some of my friends too. Just kind of through football season. I haven't looked at the basketball ones as much, but that's something to do there as well. Kyle, do you have anything else you want to close us with?
Well, I was going to say Prize Picks. Jaden McDaniels under rebounds and Ant under assists have been paying my mortgage. So shout out to those two. No, I just one more time. I know we did this earlier, but next Friday, November 15th, it's a really cool. We've done a lot of cool live shows, and we appreciate all the sponsors and people that show up to those. But this one's a little different for us, a little more unique. And I know it's a little bit of a trek down there to get down to, I think it's Welch, Minnesota. But come, because it's going to be really fun. We're going to be watching the game. we were going to be talking to people during the game. I know Dane will be charting rotations, but I won't. So we'll be just having a good time
Charting
watching
beers drink. Yeah.
Wolves Kings, which is, always a good time, right?
Yeah,
like hit the over on that. So come to Treasure Island Friday, November 15th, and you and I are going to be doing a lot of pods. You're going to be out here next week too for that Blazers doubleheader. So I appreciate you and appreciate everyone that listens to this, and good luck today, and hope everyone has a good week. Yeah,
it is just to echo on the Treasure Island thing. It is a big ask. It's a 45-minute drive down there. We picked, like Kyle said earlier, we picked the best night possible. We thought for that. I worked with the Treasure Island team to make that happen. I think we'll do our best to make it fun. Hopefully the Wolves will too, if you are able to come down there. And again, if you want to make a weekend out of it, you can get a room at Treasure Island as well for the evening. All right, Kyle, that's all I got. I am going to head to Chicago for the game on Thursday night. Because it's a Thursday, Friday back-to-back, we're not going to do a pod until Saturday. Chris is going to be in Chicago, and then we're both going to come back for the home game against Portland. So we'll both have been at both of those games in the locker room and all that good stuff. And we will talk about that for a rare Saturday morning podcast. But yes, so if you're looking, Britt and I are going to record on Thursday morning. So that'll kind of be the pod to carry you through the rest of the week. But then on the weekend, we'll recap the Thursday, Friday games against the Bulls and Blazers. And then we'll keep moving. Was it the Heat on Sunday? And then I'm coming out to Portland for a back-to-back with you. So a lot more Wolves to come. Kyle, I appreciate you doing it.
Thanks, sir.
Okay. So next up is Britt on Thursday morning. That will be in your feeds probably around 11:30 noon. Until then, he's Kyle. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.